Lab to Lifespan, AI, Aging, and the Future of Longevity Innovation.
Hello, welcome. So this is an exciting panel, and I think we all know this is addressing a problem that affects us all, aging. The question is, why aren't more people focused on solving this problem? So I'm going to take a moment to introduce myself, and then I'm going to invite each of the panelists to introduce themselves and let us know what their current activities are in this field and the value they're bringing. So I'll begin and say I'm Maryam Mokhtarzadeh. I'm a physician and surgeon by training with a long career of innovating and supporting innovation to bring solutions to patients. In addition to my clinical practice, I spent about a decade at FDA working across drugs, devices, and biologics, leadership roles including serving as the FDA IRB chair, followed by multiple leadership roles in industry, and currently serving as the chief medical officer of a venture studio where we build around early innovators. Now I'll pass it on to my first panelist, Boris.
Okay, let's see. Okay. Hi, I'm Boris Reznik, the chairman and CEO of Immorta Bio. I hated the concept of death as long as I remember, but as many serial entrepreneurs, I've been focused on raising and developing different companies, but for the last several years I decided to completely focus on longevity and radical life extension, and we fortunately have been able to develop very potent, practical and near-term solutions, which we will be talking about that today, and I'm very happy to be here.
Hello, everyone. Karl Mehta. I am an investor based in Palo Alto. I was a former partner at Menlo Ventures in Menlo Park. I built 3 technology companies over the past 25 years. I'm not a chemistry or a biology person. I'm an engineer and a software engineer and an AI, worked 30 years in AI. I'll pick up a controversy right in the introduction. I would say I'm not afraid or not scared of death. I think death is important. At some point, we all have to move on and let the next generation, flourish. What I am interested in this space is about reducing the gap between the health span and the lifespan. So we should live longer as per the human biology, at least the way I understand. We are designed actually to live for at least 120 years. Both from a scientific standpoint and also from the Indian tradition of the yogic 5,000 years back, people used to live 120 years because they were living good, healthy lifestyle. They were breathing good air. They were eating the right stuff. They were doing the right level, right kind of movement. So we are designed to live 120 years healthy. The modern lifestyle, the industrialization, the way we live, we've actually shortened our lifespan, but we also shorten our health span. So my interest is that let's live 120 years, live it super healthy, and focused on technologies that helps drive that.
Fantastic. I knew I should have sat on the other side of you a second ago. But so my name is David Snow. I call myself a recovering scientist. My PhD is in chemistry and chemical engineering. But I'm currently the executive director of Pegasus Park, which is a place-based innovation strategy centered around building ecosystems, and it's basically an innovation hub that supports life science and social impact. And so that I'm not a real estate guy, but it is a for-profit real estate development. But the pretext is all about creating the environment to accelerate translation. And so that's really the value proposition when you start thinking about investing in companies and in people, about where they are located in the ecosystem that they reside in. It's extremely important in that translation space. And I couldn't agree more that there's this issue of lifespan and health span. I don't think that we currently, and we're talking about AI and how that involves innovation and the pathway to commercialization. I don't think that we have really an issue of ideation and creativity. Those things are accelerating very rapidly. I think the bottleneck is translation. And so the ecosystem around where you invest is critical to make sure that we're getting the right types of technologies in the market. And I hope we get a chance to talk a little bit more about some of the environmental pressures that are affecting the lifespan and health span as well.
Thank you. I'm Aubey de Grey. I have some things in common with some of the panel and some things not in common. I was originally an engineer. I did my undergrad degree in computer science. I switched to being a biologist around the age of 30, and my PhD is in biology. I am, like Boris, not terribly keen on the whole thing about death. But even though I am misrepresented in the media quite a lot, I don't really work on longevity. I work on health, like everyone here. However, I disagree sharply with the idea that we are aiming to compress the period between health span and death. In other words, I think that we should be accepting and indeed celebrating the fact that the longer we can get people to stay healthy, the longer they will live. And that we should be thinking in terms of delaying the period of sick span, as we might call it, rather than compressing it. There is nothing wrong with living longer. I work, unlike almost everybody here, in the non-profit sector. I lead a 501c3 public charity, actually in the Bay Area. And we work on the preclinical side of things. We try to make mice live longer as a way of figuring out how we might make humans live longer, and also as a way of waking the world up to the idea that the long dream of bringing aging under comprehensive medical control may actually be within striking distance.
Thank you. So for the first question, and I'll take volunteers after I ask the question, I'd love to hear from each of you on where you see us today with regard to longevity science and specifically AI-driven approaches, if you have comments on that specifically. What's translating from the bench to the bedside? Where do you see us now? Any volunteers to go first?
I mean, I think I alluded to this just a minute ago. It really, the bottleneck isn't the creation, the creativity. The innovation and the ideation is happening at a much faster rate. And even, being able to explore small molecules through AI-driven discovery and looking at optionality around things like repurposing existing therapeutics. Those things are happening at a fast rate, but really where we're slow, the bottleneck is in that translation. And so the ability to find the clinical pathways, navigate the regulatory environment, have the environment that breaks down those sort of systematic barriers in order to get the path to the patient a lot faster.
I will be glad. Basically, as far as the AI and everything which is happening around AI, nowadays any serious longevity company is AI enabled, okay? For example, we are absolutely using AI to find very specific epitopes which are associated with immunotherapies which we have been developing and so on. But if I step back and talk a little bit broader, I think that things are changing in the industry very, very rapidly. Basically, the concept of going after longevity is associated with going after prevention considerably more than actually treating very specific diseases. We, for example, step back and we look at the aging biology and trying to change it to achieve useful biology in the aging population. And when we do, we then can use useful biology as a therapeutic engine to solve a lot of health issues of the population. That's our general path. It's, by the way, is very much along the concepts and which were postulated to our friend Aubey almost 30 years ago, as I remember. So that's where we are going, and that's where I think the science of longevity is going right now.
Yeah. First of all, I'd love to reframe the word longevity, because if we are hyper-focused on longevity, we will solve longevity, but we will still be very sick, and there's no point in living longer if we are sick. So I would rather focus on what we call extending health span, because if we extend health span, we'll live healthy and we'll live longer, and by that token, you're still getting longevity, you can live longer, but we want to live every single day very healthy. So that's the first point. The second thing is we're in a great time, I think, probably ever in the history of humanity. I mean, AI is everywhere, also in healthcare and biology. The foundational biology models that AlphaFold and many other companies have built, that's driving the cutting edge drug discovery. So that's great news there. Second big area in medical devices, there's already hundreds of medical devices which are AI enabled, and they are FDA certified. So we are solving the problem from a patient standpoint, and in the technology world, in the software world, we always we put the user at the center. And so when I think not from the industry or from the supply side, but from the patient standpoint, we're solving the problem on the prescription and on the procedure. There's a lot of AI in the prescriptive drugs and into the procedures at the health systems and hospitals using these AI devices, where it's not making the impact is right at the patient level, because these things are still solving, it's still reactive. It is after the fact that you've been diagnosed, and by the time you get diagnosed, already the damage has been done. And so then going to the hospitals and using AI-enabled devices that helps you in the procedure, or getting a prescription drugs, which is new molecules or whatever has been discovered, peptides, but you are now solving a problem still on a reactive basis. Where we need to take the clock back is right from a preventive basis. If you look at just the spend in chronic care disease, which pretty much 80% of Americans have chronic diseases, there's a $3.7 trillion spent just in the United States on just chronic care disease. It's crazy. And most of it can be solved. And that's part of the aging process too, because when you define aging as a disease, and when you break it down systematically into what are the causes of accelerated aging or early death, you get heart failures, cancer. These are all the biggest killers. And if you further break it down, it comes down into really some of the basics of lifestyle management, chronic care management. These are the foundational stuff that people are ignoring. And we're all doing, I mean, it's great to definitely spend billions of dollars on cutting edge drug discovery and cutting edge medical devices, but we also have to solve this preventative problem. Otherwise, we'll continue to remain in what we are today. The healthcare system is a reactive system. It is an episodic system, not a continuous system, and it is not doing really anything proactive or preventative, and we'll continue to have this, chronic care, chronic diseases.
Yeah, there's there's so many things I want to say in reinforcement and support of what you just said. I'll just stick to two things. First of all, on AI, I think a key point that you made was to highlight AlphaFold. This is an example of something that people in the longevity field often miss in relation to AI, which is that the most important things so far, and maybe also going forward, that AI has given us are not specific to longevity. They cover the whole of biomedical research. AlphaFold, for sure, is relevant to pediatric research just as much as it is to geriatric research. So, we need to be looking out for that and not being too blinkered on this point. The other thing I really think I should mention is with regard to prevention rather than treatment. I think, this is so important that, all treatment of aging is really treatment, it's really preventative medicine for the late stages of aging, the conditions of late life that are degenerative and progressive. And the medical system's, failure to transition to a more preventative-centric mindset is really quite extraordinary right now, partly because of the absolutely unequivocal economic benefits of prevention relative to treatment, where, as you just mentioned, perhaps 80 or 90% of the medical budget of the Western world goes on treatment of the health problems of late life. I mean, what on earth is going on? As you can tell from my accent, I come from that far-off place called the rest of the world, where we don't do our medical system through insurance. But I don't have a problem with insurance. I think, that's a perfectly good way to run a medical system. Really, the only problem in the US, I believe, is, well, first of all, of course, the addiction to litigation, which enormously increases costs, but also the fact that insurance is done on a company-by-company basis, such that insurance companies have to think short-term because their clients are going to move to another job and have another insurer. It seemed like an extraordinarily simple thing to fix, and nobody is fixing it. So get the hell on with it. If that were fixed, then we'd have a good medical system in this country. So I just wanted to highlight those two things. I could go on, but I won't.
So each of you brought up a lot of specific areas where work is needed. On the prevention side, clearly on the repair side, lifestyle changes, which maybe blend back into preventive. But I'm curious, if I gave each of you $1 million right now to place a bet, what emerging modalities or what approach would you place your bet on today, and where do you see that changing over time with the way the field is evolving?
So I'd like to go first this time, because so $1 million is actually quite a lot for me. My foundation is actually quite small because we work in the preclinical sector. So our experiments are relatively inexpensive, and they typically cost 7 digits, maybe high 7 digits, but not too bad. So actually, I wouldn't bet it. I would take it and use it for my own research. But if I were to bet it, the thing is, I would also not bet it on any one thing. The key thing we have to understand, and I think that most of the experts in this community do now understand, is that the medical control of aging is going to be a divide and conquer thing. It's going to be something where we give people a lot of different things at the same time to repair various different types of molecular and cellular damage that their bodies inflict on themselves throughout life as a result of just normal metabolism. And as such, my focus over the years has always been on the most neglected, most challenging, and indeed most unprofitable initially parts of the problem, which of course will be just as necessary in the long run as the low-hanging fruit, but which do not make you money tomorrow, do not get you lots of publications in top journals tomorrow. It's a more long-term play. And that's why I chose to lead organizations that are funded entirely by philanthropy.
So the question about, where would I invest in this, I think is really interesting. So I work at the intersection really of, ideation, innovation, commercialization, capital. And so one of the things, and I'll kind of riff a little bit off of what Karl said a second ago about, technologies that are emerging and challenges that we've got. So with that in mind, place-based innovation and innovation hubs converge resources to make them accessible so that you shorten the time span between, great idea and product market entrance. So if I had $1 million to invest, I would actually use it to converge around certain ideas. And one of the things that's big right now, ARPA-H, so Pegasus Park is one of the 3 ARPA-H hubs. And it's about customer experience. And they've dropped a large segment of non-dilutable capital towards microplastics and understanding microplastics in the body and what that can do and how that impacts longevity and health span. So, if I had $1 million, what I would actually do is use the money to converge different business verticals. For example, there's a lot of work being done in the semiconductor industry and technologies that could directly apply to that, but they don't have any access or resources in the biotech space or in the clinic. And the same is true for what people believe to be the problems in biotech and clinical. So the white spaces are different. And so I think the opportunity, the real solutions that emerge, especially when AI is involved, when we think about longevity and health span in particular, I think that it's going to center around the convergence of formerly separate business sectors. And so I think the opportunity is going to be in convergence of biotech and semiconductor worlds.
If I would look and try to predict what is going to happen, there are several trends which come to my mind very much. Number one, personalized medicine. If we take a look at the science fiction, which very often predicts, the future, you could see that in science fiction, a lot of people would be living hundreds of years and so on, and they do not do that by just taking a small pill and that's it. Normally they come into the hospital, they are inserted all kind of different probes and needles, and then with certain intervention on a personalized level, they go back and have another, multiple decades of healthy life and so on and so on. So that's exactly where I think we need to go at this point, and on a personalized level, we absolutely have to have a I do not separate, by the way, longevity or lifespan and health span. They very often go together. So the other interesting path is you are talking about convergence, right? So, we deal with convergence of the different elements of the aging biology. We all know 9 hallmarks of cellular aging. So interesting point is that they all converge onto very few, in fact, just 2 major problems which aging biology presents. Number one, of course, it is accumulation of senescent cells. Number 2, it's stem cell exhaustion. So that's so we go from multiple, cellular reasons for aging to very few actionable areas to address. That's what we do. You know, we address senescent cell accumulation through senolytic immunotherapy, and we address the exhaustion by providing brand new, very young, very potent stem cells. So from that point of view, we are out with the old, which are those old senescent cells, and in with the new, which are the very, very potent, you know, stem cells which rejuvenate tissues and organs. So in my mind, that concept of moving toward solving the overall aging biology and creating youthful biology, which, by the way, goes into prevention. Youthful biology is what we need to achieve. Young people do not have diseases of aging, and they generally, of course, live very nice, healthy lives. That's the path which I think we are all should be going forward.
So Maryam, to reframe your question, the $1 million is really a very small amount in the healthcare sector. So if you're saying if you're $1 million, I would...
Let's make it $1 billion.
Okay, $1 million bet, but even $1 million is a very small bet. It won't go, even if you make 3x the money, it's not a big enough money for most funds, at least for us. And so I think I would focus not on the treatment side of the equation, but more on the preventive side. So companies that are focusing on digital therapeutics, like predictability, is where our bet is. AI can really help predict, as we are at a first time in the history of the humans. We have so much data available about ourselves. We are getting to know about our body, our mind, that what we know today, we didn't even know like literally a year ago. At least for me, how much data that I'm getting for my own self. I mean, not just these variables like this aura and the whoops of the world, but just the very detailed, very comprehensive blood test and omics and all kinds of stuff. So I'm building my own digital twin of myself, and that level of rich set of data never existed, like literally not even 6 months ago, right? And so $1 million will go far, far away in just taking that data and be able to predict at where we could land up, and then having some strategy around preventive, proactive care against that. That would be my bet.
Okay.
Yeah, this is one of those rare occasions where I slightly disagree with Boris, because I believe that the two main aspects of aging that Boris mentioned are not the only things that matter. And the main things that I believe also matter are at the molecular level, the accumulation of waste products, the changing in the elasticity of the extracellular matrix, things like that. And these are areas where AI, I believe, has a very large potential to come into its own. We mentioned AlphaFold already. Some of you may know that a kind of successor to AlphaFold now exists called AlphaProteo, which essentially does the opposite of AlphaFold. AlphaFold takes a sequence and tells you what three-dimensional shape the protein is going to be. AlphaProteo, you tell it what you want, and it gives you a sequence. And AlphaProteo, has really not come into its own yet. I believe that its potential is absolutely enormous, and the reason it's being perhaps a little slow to show that is because people haven't yet figured out how to use it. That the potential there is so enormous that one has to kind of build tools around it, which I think also will involve AI, to establish how to find a path from a desired structure, for example, an enzyme that has a proteolytic function that doesn't otherwise exist naturally into a sequence that delivers that function. You know, these are things that will totally transform the molecular aspects of rejuvenation, of repairing the damage of aging, and I think they're coming.
So we only have a few minutes left, and I think you can hear the passion, the mission of the panelists in trying to solve this problem. And for the close, I'm going to bring it back to an idea that David has been kind of saying throughout. In that there are bottlenecks, and the bottlenecks are real. And my personal take on this is that in clinical practice, in my time in government, in industry, one of the greatest tragedies for me was seeing programs fail, not when the science failed, but when there were other problems in execution. And that's why I'm now at a venture studio where we build around early innovators to try and give that science the best chance it can, to show what it can do, to succeed. Because not every approach may succeed as wildly as we want it to, but we want it to work. So really quick now, I'm going to go through each of you. If you could choose one thing to change or accelerate to get the approach you believe in to the patient, what would it be and why?
As far as I'm concerned, a lot of money. So funding all of this process. We have a lot of tools in terms of IND processes, in terms of clinical interventions. I'm talking about clinical trials processes and so on. But everything costs a lot, and obviously money would be solving a lot of issues.
I would like FDA to recognize aging as a disease, and our healthcare system to actually look at aging, to treat aging as a disease. Today, we don't do that.
A little different perspective from my world, but I think that I would love to see a national strategy around funding and building science parks. I'll give you just a quick overview of that purpose, and it has to do with the conversation we had in the hallway where you were engaged in a research part, but there was co-location, but there wasn't a value proposition for you to be engaged in that community and stay because there wasn't a real relationship or a unified purpose going forward. And so there, you have to move beyond co-location to do something with intentionality, and the programs and the people and the technologies that get clustered in a science park really build the emergence of a unique fingerprint in a particular business vertical, where if you're investing in building a technology in a particular space, you're going to have the most reasonable likelihood of success to be in that community. You can be successful other places, but your timeline and the investment to get to product or service, market entry that benefits patient is much, much faster. The rest of the world has strategies around place-based innovation. Taiwan, I use this example a lot, 90% of their GDP comes from 4 science parks. China has 150 of them with a massive amount that's coming of intellectual property. And so they're globally recognized sources of intellectual property and regional economic transformation. So I would love to see a national effort around that and get away from sort of the divided nature that we've got with the EDA and the SBA and NSF and some of the tech hubs, things like that, but get a real strategy behind it.
So I have 2 answers, one regarding the FDA and one regarding society in general. Regarding the FDA, hello, 10 years ago, the FDA did, for all practical purposes, recognize aging as a disease. A clinical trial was proposed to look at the impact of metformin on aging, and it was approved by the FDA. They agreed on a clinical endpoint, which was complicated and did not use the word aging, but which absolutely was aging in all but name. And the FDA said yes. The FDA has done its bit, and it blows my mind that the industry has completely ignored that. It is completely scandalous, and it is not the FDA's fault. Regarding society, 6 years ago, an interesting thing happened. The world had a new problem, and it wasn't in favor of it. It was called COVID. And the world said to its elected representatives, fix this, please. And the elected representatives duly tore up all of the regulatory inertia and bureaucratic institutionalism that normally holds things back and makes them take so long, with the result that multiple vaccines were developed and globally distributed in 1 year, when previously the world record had been 10 years. The only problem that we have with aging is that it's not a new problem. It's a problem that society has learnt to be very fatalist about and to put out of its mind, with the result that aging is not treated the same way. Our goal must be to make aging the new COVID.
So, I just want to thank each of my panelists for, again, their passion and the value they're bringing to bring about real progress in this field. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, with all the mention of the FDA in this session, that this is a time of extraordinary regulatory change. And with that comes the loss of some certainty in some initiatives that might have been priorities in the past, and the opportunity to think differently, creatively, and maybe push new agendas forward. So with that, I'll just say that it's an incredible time right now, and we get to shape it. We're very lucky. Thank you all for your contribution. I really appreciate the conversation. Thank you.